And uh, uh, we're juggling tonight a little bit of a balance between people who are actually joining us for the first time, um, and people who have been um, who are part of a ward team, but it hasn't, had a lot of opportunity to meet yet, and people who are part of wards teams that have been already meeting their counselors, and very much launched even prior to the beginning of this project. So it's a bit of a mix, but hopefully there's something here for everyone in our short evening together. So and it's just one of a few to come. Um, Yesterday afternoon, I went on a walk with Green Neighbors 21, and we followed the ancient Indigenous footpath that is now Davenport. This is one of many reminders that this is the ancestral lands of Indigenous nations, such as the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, and in particular the Chippewa, the Wendat peoples, and recently the Mississaugas of the Credit, with whom we have Treaty 13. We walked near two healing forests while we were going about, and that they've been established in this area, and they're stewarded by local Indigenous leadership. They're not big, but they're beautiful. This is a reminder that there are many Indigenous organizations providing leadership here, and that Toronto is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Up the street from where we were walking, there's the Indigenous-run institution called Name Res, a very long-standing residence here for Indigenous men seeking help to establish themselves in the city. So I encourage all of us, particularly those of us of European settler descent, to bear in mind that we have a responsibility to redress the harms caused by the broken promises and the attempted erasure of Indigenous peoples, and that we build right relations. And with that in mind, I found some interesting resources to learn more about the Indigenous history of this area. And I also searched for Indigenous-led organizations that are helping people. I mentioned one, Name Res, but there are a bunch. And I encourage us all to read about them, promote them, and if possible, monetarily support them. And the links are in the chat. Finally, I have a little challenge to all of you, and that is that we're seeking others who would like to acknowledge the Indigenous history and leadership or settler reconciliation efforts in your part of the city. So if that appeals to you, if you have something to say about that you'd like to share, email us at the Wards Project, and we'll have you do a land acknowledgement at our next one of our next meetings. So tonight's agenda is going to be probably about 20 minutes of some slides that Susan and I put together. Susan's the mastermind, but I helped a bit. And we have some quick talking points to those. Then we've invited a couple people here to tell us of their work already with their counselors, because they're from two groups that are already very involved. And I think that that will be of interest to those of you who have yet to launch yourselves. And then the rest of the evening, that which is left of it before 9, I'm going to close at 9, is for discussion. So those of you who, you want to talk about something, add something, ask questions, whatever comes up for you. We're not going to go into a breakout group. We're just going to stay as a larger group, and hopefully it will be a good opportunity to chat. Okay, so then I'm going to pass it over to you now, Susan, to get started on the slides.
Okay, can everyone see the slides okay? Yes, I'm seeing shaking heads. Okay, so as Val said, we're trying to kind of combine two things in one. So for those of you that have already heard our spiel, and we've had some fantastic meetings with quite a few of you in the room, I'm going to quickly go through this part, but these are the key points that I really want people to remember and our groups to take on board as we get into the next phases. So you'll remember that in the presentations we've been doing for TCAN and ClimateFast, we started this wards project to ensure that we get the fully funded and fully supported Transform TO that that Toronto needs. And the big idea behind this is letting our councillors, letting the city staff, and letting Toronto know that a climate strategy, as powerful as Transform TO could be, is actually a livability strategy for our city and everyone who lives in it. So how are we going to do that? Well, we want to connect constituents with their councillors. So we want to start building positive and sustainable relationships with ward members and their councillors and the councillor staff. And through these relationships and the meetings that we're hoping everyone can have, we want to generate excitement within City Hall, within our wards, and then hopefully that will translate into more funding and implementation for Transform TO initiatives. And we know that it is crucial that city council, city staff support the Transform TO plan if we are going to get the required resources and the funding, and then additionally to put pressure on other levels of government to support the city in rolling out the Transform TO initiatives. And a reminder that I think Anne Curie put together a fantastic presentation in December where she reminded us that Transform TO is directly because of advocacy work done by people like us. And we can't stop now as we're getting ready for this new June launch of the 26 to 2030 Transform TO plan, because we know that the steps that they're going to be introducing that will make the significant difference we need could be resisted by organizations like development organizations. We're already seeing the city is getting pushback from them with court cases. And then we're also potentially up against big organizations like Enbridge. And just to highlight this, I wanted to point out that our voice, and this is a direct quote from this City of Toronto's budget report, our voice has already made a difference. And you can see that when the city went around to all the different wards, they found that environment and climate action programs were third on the list of things that people wanted to fund, as TTC and Wheel-Trans was second. So these things are important to Toronto, and it's important that our council hears that. However, when you look at the budget, you can see TTC and Wheel-Trans high up here. Fantastic, that's where we want it. But then down here, Parks and Rec, roads, bike lanes, sidewalks, and then way down here, we've got environment and climate action programs. So what they hear and what they do and what they say they'll do isn't quite jiving. So that's where we come in with the Wards Project. And a reminder again for some of you, maybe this is new, but what we are aiming to do is to get teams of 3 or more people in each of the wards across the city. Right now we have 16 wards represented with teams, so which is pretty good. I think we're almost at capacity in terms of able to manage that. We have 14 groups or wards represented tonight, so we're pretty happy with that as well. We want the teams in each of the wards to be able to develop strategies that are unique to the needs of the ward constituents and the wards itself. And we want to be able to do that in a way that's not onerous on our wards teams. We want people to bring their own stories to council. You don't need to be a climate scientist to convey to our council and to our city staff that having a climate ready city is important to you for a variety of reasons, for your children, for your health, for your mental health. Like, it's your stories that matter. And we're hoping that as we meet with our council, we'll be able to help the council connect the dots between the people that live in the city and the actions that we need to take to make sure we have a livable one. To support you, ClimateFast will be developing resources and hosting events, and we'll get into that a bit later. But that's how it's going to work. And I'm going to pass it over to Val, who's going to kind of go over the roles that we hope everyone will take on.
Yeah, so this is we were just kind of brainstorming how this would work. So as Word project team members attend team meetings, they attend information and training sessions like these whenever they can. They would attend the counselor meetings, and help with projects or goals that the team determines for their ward. So it's like a public outreach kind of ideas. And then the point person for the ward. So we're hoping that some of you are here. Absolutely, you've already said you would be a point person, but we are looking for people to take that on in some of the teams, and that person would do all of the above, plus set up the team meetings and be the main contact and liaise with ourselves. The Wards Project Steering Committee is so far myself and Susan and Lynn and Judith. But we're happy to have more people support the project as a whole. And we're developing the resources and administering the teams and doing a lot of facilitating where we can. So that's kind of the structure. And by the way, I forgot to mention earlier, we're just kind of ripping through these slides, but during the discussion, please, if you have questions related to them, that's when we'll deal with them. And so then this is a rough timeline that Susan created. So the wards teams have been forming over the last couple months with a provincial election thrown in there to knock us off kilter. We're involved in orientations and group meetings. And then the pink dots are our training and information sessions, one being this, and then we have a few more planned, and again, they will be discussed shortly. And the ward project team meetings will go on as needed, and that's up to the teams to decide. We're hoping that for those people who haven't met with their counselors yet, we're hoping those meetings will happen in April or early May. And throughout this whole period, we will have check-in sessions with the broader group as well to talk about what's working, what isn't working for the various teams. And that little pink dot in the middle, thank you, Susan, is where we're going to find out, like June is when the 2026-2030 plan will be revealed. And the closer we get to it, the more we'll know about it. It'll be released, and we may very well want to coalesce around kind of a big city demand or two at that point. And so that's what we're thinking might happen there. The star is the actual release. And then, of course, we will want to meet with our counselors, who hopefully we've made best friends with, before the vote, so as to have an influence on that. That's our hoped for timeline.
Okay, so in order to do all that amazing work, we're hoping to roll out some resources that you could find useful when you're prepping for your meetings and doing your other activities. The first resources that we're developing right now are the trainings and information sessions. They're starting, so this is kind of just the orientation, but we're doing a meeting with your counselor training session next Monday, March 24th. That will be going from 8 to 9 p.m. I think I sent out a notification about that. Laura Lindberg will be the trainer for us. We met with her today. It's really exciting, very thorough. We're going to come away with some really amazing skills around setting your agenda, setting team roles, follow-ups, all of these things that she's thinking of. I did want to point out to everyone here that that meeting will not be recorded. That is Laura's request. I will be taking notes, so I will have some resource, but it would be really beneficial if at least one member of your team could attend that training, because again, it will not be recorded. On April 7th, we will be inviting a city staff person to give us a training and information session on Transform TO. We'll be sending out information on that presently. And then coming up, we are brainstorming an idea that we have on storytelling. So telling your climate story in terms of communicating with other constituents, with your councillor, with the staff, in a different type of way, more personal way. So we're going to probably do that in late April, early May. And then we don't have a date yet, but this is a definite one. Once the new plan is released, we will be having a session hosted by an outside organization. So not a city person. We'll have another organization run us through. And the reason we want to do that is we would like some insight into where the plan is needing some support, where things are lagging, what things that we should really advocate for within that report. So we kind of wanted a neutral party as we prep for the secondary meetings. I think everyone in this room knows that ClimateFast already has some incredible events that we host throughout the year, the deputation trainings, heat pumps, and of course, you will be getting notifications on that. Now, those would be more general, not wards project specific. And when I'm done this, I will put in the chat registration for a training that's next Wednesday on how to write an op-ed. And we're hosting that because we need more information in mainstream media, and we need more people with eyeballs on climate information. So we're hoping to get more larger pieces and more outlets across the country, quite frankly. Another resource that we are working, this is the monitoring of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee items. Last month, I sent out an email with a request for people to write in deputations to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee with regards to specific items that directly related to Transform TO. This is kind of in addition to your ward's project activities, and I don't want it to become onerous for anyone in this room that I'm adding more onto you. But I think it is, I think like the steering committee feels it is important that we know what's going on in City Hall, what things are being voted on. And the writing helps. It makes sure that even if your ward isn't actually involved in that agenda item, then the councillors still know that people across the city are watching what's going on. But again, I don't want that to be too onerous, but we will be sending out notices to you about these items. And then the last thing that we're working on is a wards project team handbook. And this will be a living document that will be on Google, and I'll release the URL when it's a little prettier. It's pretty ugly right now, but this will be a living document with background information on Transform TO, a bit more information on specific issues like the bike lanes, flooding, tree canopy, green space, waste, the items that are kind of in Transform TO. And we'll also have a list of contact information for your counselors, and also kind of importantly, as we're prepping for our meetings, what you can actually ask a counselor for. So, you know, there's the 3 levels of government. So we want to make sure that we kind of know what our counselor can and can't actually do. And within this document, we would encourage you when you're going through it, if you're having If you find a good piece of information, feel free to add to it. If you've had an experience with a counselor and there's a spot in the handbook that you think other people would benefit from, add it in. So it's a living shared document with all the wards teams. Now I'm going to go to this one. So again, many of you know, I think a lot of you were at our launch of this really exciting new initiative that ClimateFasts has just launched, the Climate Voting Records Toronto, which was created to show how climate-related items are being voted on by our city councillors. And we're hoping that this will increase transparency and allow constituents to know exactly how their councillors have been voting. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week, but I just wanted to highlight it. And if you wanted to go to votingrecords.climatefast.ca and have a little play around, it's kind of a way that we can create a profile for a counselor, kind of create a story of like how they've been voting, and kind of get to know the historical voting records around climate related items. And I'll pass it off to Val.
And another resource, probably most of you are familiar, lots of you will have participated in this, so I'll keep it short, but the Toronto Climate Action Network has just brought out its consultation report based on the survey that it did, where it asked us all to, we looked at all the different targets in Transform TO and what our expectations are of what the government could do. And this report, I've been poring over it. I just find it's just wonderful. It's full of people's actual words, and it's also does a summary of the kinds of asks we could make of our counselors. And Interestingly, it seems that solar power received the most mentions. Some of the ideas, just briefly, mandating solar panels, providing more incentives, encouraging bulk buying programs, and using solar canopies, like for example, over parking lots and that kind of thing. Other ideas that are top of mind are like the bike lane issue, and in fact, improving bike lanes. Also, designated bus lanes was a big one in different parts. I think in particular Scarborough, green tree canopy, and urban agricultural ideas. So, like city orchards and rooftop gardens, in supporting Indigenous-led food sovereignty programs. So there were lots of great ideas in there, and we really recommend that everybody look through that for inspiration.
And I'll put that in the chat in a little bit.
Yeah, Ray's been doing a great job. Thanks, Ray, of putting things in the chat for us.
Thank you, Ray.
So we're getting to the next steps. We're going to arrange a team meeting in person or Zoom, like if as soon as possible. So I am the co-point person for Ward 12, so I'll be connecting with my Ward 12 buddies very soon to get going on what we want to prioritize when we get to our counselor, Josh Matlow. And then after next week, when we learn the ins and outs of counselor meetings, then we will ask for one and take it from there. Again, things to think about are what our asks will be. And we really have to remind ourselves, like, I don't know, I get myself very in a knot when I try to read Transform TO. It's a huge document, lots of detail, complicated. So we don't need to know the complicated stuff. That's their job. We're concerned constituents. And so I like this particular question, which is, what's being done, to your knowledge, counselor, to achieve our net zero targets? What evidence is there in our ward? That's a question that we could lead with. And in fact, it's one that we could, send to them in advance if they, so as not to spring it on them. so they can do their homework. Um, Now we know that some of the counselors, lots of the counselors of people represented here are already people who, kind of get it. Generally, some of them even helped get Transform TO, passed and so on. So then our question to them is, well, what can we do to help engage other constituents in our ward, educate people, and you know, uh, I'm sure they'll also say talk to the other levels of government, and that will be something that that we can um, move on to after the June um, plan is voted on. And then, of course, we might have some really ward-specific concerns. And those are things to generate amongst ourselves as well.
That's it for the slides. And I see Lynn, our other,
Can I, yes,
yeah,
can
please
I
go ahead.
just add that I'm putting in the chat presentation slides that we used in January to introduce the Transform TO. And I was just going to say that slides 3, 4, and 5 in particular give you some background on what are the areas of concern that the staff are working on, because we want to be able to know what the big areas are they're working on, and then, of course, what are the kind of strategies that might address those areas. So anyway, that's just a resource. If you weren't at the sessions that we did January 15th or 18th, you might find that of interest, or for others, it'll be a review. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. So Val and I just talked a lot. And one thing that we want to make sure, or many things we want you to hear tonight, is that there's no one way of creating a wards team or implementing activities or strategies within your ward team. It's going to be very unique to your ward. So to kind of help you envision this process, we've actually asked two wards teams to talk to you tonight about how they got started and how they're working with the wards project within their groups. So we're going to have Judith Lawrence, who is our steering committee person as well. And she's in Willowdale, and she's going to be talking about her experience with her counselor. And then after Judith, we're going to have Janet Young from Don Valley West talking to us. So Judith, I give it away to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just wanted to start with kind of my connection with ClimateFast, and I joined really as a neophyte during COVID, and very soon got involved with learning about Transform TO because it was relevant to ClimateFast's way of being, and it rooted me quite well in knowing about the city and what the asks are as far as net zero, and it's to me a long learning curve. So we had a new counselor, and I learned about, also with the ClimateFast, learned about the deputation thing. And when I went regarding city budget, well, I was doing it with a climate lens because I had the help from various organizations, but particularly ClimateFast. And then, so I got to know our council. I'm from Ward 18, Willowdale, Lily Chang, and showed up a lot of things, for a lot of things with her, so that I was on kind of hugging connections sometimes. And when it came to the whole wards project, well, before that, Lily wanted to get various groups going for housing, poverty, climate, etc. And so she had these climate roundtables, and people were just invited from her newsletter. And I showed up, and I asked about an eco fair because we didn't have anything like that in Willowdale. And so we connected with the Environment Day, the Environment Days and started this there were just two of us that were doing it, and with people from the city, but again, connections, and so we've done it a few times now with Environment Days, and when the wards project came up, I thought, well, maybe we can arrange to have a meeting with Lily, and so we did that early in January before really a lot of other things were going on. And it was a successful meeting. And we had, before that, 4 people who came to my house, and we planned what we wanted and got to know each other. And the meeting was successful because we want to have places to meet, and we want to be able to, do our own thing. And Lily was willing to partner with us to find space. And so we left it at that. The election came up, and now we're getting another meeting possibly in May. But to also, we're going to meet with our small group again. So that's where we're at. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's it.
A great example of how you've connected with your counselor, but also brought a lot of community engagement and education to Willowdale. So thank you. Janet, can I pass it on to you to describe what you guys are up to?
Sure.
And Dr. Duet?
This is fun. I can't believe the timing, because we're just at this stage where we've just been a whirlwind of elections in our ward. We had we started last summer. So Mike Green, we blame for all this, because there was a by-election for a city councilor in our ward, and he saw the opportunity to start a group. He just thought this is a great thing. So he did a group email to anybody with a postal code on the Green Neighbors Network subscriber list who lived in the ward. So there was a bunch of us who came up. We had a couple of Zoom calls in August, and we decided to organize. We didn't know where to start. So we decided to do candidate interviews with any of the people who are running for councillor. This is after Jay Robinson died, and they held a by-election November. So we had a couple months to pull together some questions, meet with these people. We were impartial. We weren't going to judge or rank any of them. We didn't have the expertise to do that, but we said we would share their stories, the interview with as well as we could. So we conducted in-person and online interviews with nine of the 16 candidates. We produced a summary report, which we leaned on. We still don't have any social media, so we leaned on Green Neighbors Network, TCAN, any neighborhood Facebook groups that we knew. We just tried to get a summary report out there. We got a piece in Leaside Life. Deborah, who was a contact, wrote an article about us with a link to the report. So it gave us, having to develop the interview questions forced us to think about how we wanted to organize the issues. So we settled on Transform TO, which is kind of a black box. When you say you have to read all that, but we decided to go with that framework, and we came up with 16 questions. And it was great because we got to meet the candidates who are known and well connected in the community. So we had a great opportunity there. And then once in office, Councillor Chernos Lynn was happy to meet us. She already knew who we were. And we sat down with her in January just to start just a preliminary meeting, get to know, to explore ways that we could work with her. One thing that she was very receptive to was she has to put out a newsletter every month, does News Plus. So any content that we can send her way, she would, she's got a staffer there that would take a look at that and try to include it. So very positive first step. And then individually, some of us have, like, I'm interested in the parks. We've got somebody who really knows the cycling. So individually, we're also following up. So there's the dog off leash report that's coming out, we've got another stakeholder meeting tomorrow, but I'm really interested in Sherwood Park. And I know already there's some funding in the capital campaign set aside this year. And who knows, but I think we raised a thing that, she was new to the job, but I think it was probably already in the works, but I have a feeling she would have paid attention to that when she was looking at the budget. So feeling pretty good about that. We were very limited though, because we don't have the social media, so we had to rely on others. And then the trustee election came up, with the counselor leaving her job on the board. There was an election in March, so we came into the new year with that election. We used Google Forms to create an online survey. We only heard back from 6 of the some dozen candidates. But Karen, who I know who's on this call, spent hours combing through their framework for climate action, and it's pretty onerous, but she came up with 21 questions, which we then we produced a report, we shared it online best we could. We only had a 4-day turnaround but we did a poster blitz as well. We hung posters at the schools, elementary and secondary schools, about 20 in the city, just really to get the vote out. There wasn't that much differentiation between the candidates, except for one who was clearly not interested in the climate agenda. So we just decided, just to get some awareness up and get people out. So we did that. And then we've got the federal election coming up. So I think we're going to take what we learned with these 2 previous campaigns. We'd love to interview the candidates again. If we can attend an all candidates debate, we'll do that. If we can meet community face to face, because we haven't done any of that yet, hopefully to recruit a few more people, and then get some social media up and running. And then post-election, things are up in the air. So the timing couldn't be better. Like, seriously, these are the things we were just thinking about, how we go forward. So delighted to be on the call today.
Thanks so much, Janet. Wow. There's so much that we could mine there. I think collaborating with other teams for the social medias and resources you don't have, really highlighting your skills, capacity, and interests and how you created your strategy. And using things like the newsletter and getting word out to the community through the platforms that our counselors have available to us that we don't necessarily have ourselves. So wow, that's amazing. So thank you very much. So now, Val, I think and Lynn and Judith, we are going to turn it over to everyone else in the room to hear about any questions that you may still have, requests for additional resources, sharing of information. So I'm calling this the open mic section. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and ask a question. Now, I do see Rita has asked, is the Words Project collaborating with T? Some of what you described reminds me of what I observe T doing regularly, following council, making deputations. Yes. In a way, ClimateFast is a member of TCAN, and we sit on the city strategy meeting of which T is on. So there is collaboration. Lynn, you can correct me, but I think that a T person, will be who we ask to do the training and information session when the new version of Transform TO comes out. So not formally, but informally, we are connected and they are aware of this project. Yes. Lynn, do you want to?
Could I just
please
add
do.
to that?
Yes,
I
please.
just wanted to say that T has staff, and T kind of does policy analysis, liaises directly with City Hall, with the councillors, belongs to the TCAN city strategy meeting, and does their own detailed deputations. And sometimes they'll send out to their list an action letter that people just click and send, and it goes to their councillor. But they don't do this kind of ward organizing. They don't do that kind of grassroots organizing. We collaborate when we do the deputation trainings, because we'll organize it, we'll invite masses of people, and then they'll provide us a resource person to talk about the budget, because they will have spent several days looking at the budget, and they'll be able to tell us what it is and compare it to the policy they want. So we're kind of doing different roles, if that makes sense, but it's all to the same end of getting the city to do the things that we need to do for the environment and for climate. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, Val, before I go to Anna, do you have something to follow up with Lynn about what Lynn just said?
No, but I just want to raise the possibility that of others who might want to share their experience thus far. And it strikes me the Etobicoke folks are here and very involved, so they might want to say a word or two how they're managing their efforts. And I just wanted to thank Brian also for in the chat. He's put in the Environment Day schedules. So that's like, for example, a really great possibility for everybody to find out when their counselor is doing their Environment Day and do some public educating around that. So sorry to interrupt, but Susan, you carry on being the master of the hands.
I think Anna was next. Now I can't see her on the
Well,
screen.
yeah, I can wait until we finish surveying wards for what they found, so we can go to Brian first.
Well, something exciting that my counselor in Ward 2, Stephen Holliday, has the lowest score on the voting records website. So he's the most challenging. I did find one area of commonality in a budget presentation in the Q&A following it. So I may try to follow up on that. But Councillor Morley in Ward 3, the ward neighboring to me, is very, very interested. And Anna from the Voting Records website got invited to interview her. And what the interview is going to happen in early May. And the point of the interview is to ask her, how do you listen to your constituents? What influences your decision making? What's the most effective way to communicate with you? Do you keep, do your staff kind of keep an Excel spreadsheet on what people phone in about or email about? Are form petitions effective, or are they kind of ignored because it requires so little effort to just sign a petition that somebody else has drafted? And we also happened to speak with somebody who works for Councillor Fletcher, and he's a leading person behind this organization called Strong Towns Toronto, which is a very interesting group of mostly young urbanists who meet once a month. And anyway, he said he gave us some of this feedback about how they kind of rank input from constituents. But if we're thinking about like a committee of 3 going to meet a councillor, I think we also have to be thinking, okay, he's saying, he or she may very politely listen and answer questions. But when you leave, he or she may think, okay, that's 3 people out of 50,000 voters or whatever. Why do they matter beyond 3 votes in the next election? Can I safely ignore them because they're just 3 people? How can we come to represent more than 3 people, the 3 people in the room? How can we promise that we're going to influence more people so that we're not just 3 people? So that's what came to mind immediately. At first, they have to feel that, like my guy, Stephen Holliday, thinks he's got a lock on the voters that matter to him. And it's only a portion of the electorate, but he thinks he understands them perfectly and he represents them perfectly. And it's to them that he owes his being in office. And, the 50% of people who are tenants, he doesn't care about. And even some newer homeowners, he doesn't seem to care about. So how do you break through? And that's the mentality. How do you make it? How do you implicitly or explicitly promise that we're going to get the word out beyond the 3 of us who are facing you at this meeting?
It's an excellent question, Brian. One, I know Lynn's going to have an answer to that, but I wanted to go back to that. I think it was the 3rd slide I shared when at the budget consultations, the city really heard that climate, transportation, environmental issues are top of mind, and we all wanted greater investment. So I think that then we do have numbers that we could share with some of the councillors that may not see how a climate strategy is a livability strategy quite yet. But I'm going to pass it. I'm sorry, Jane, I know you're still waiting, but I think we wanted to respond to Brian.
Yep, I just wanted to say, Brian, what would you just say in 1 minute what you did as part of the, maybe everybody knows there was a consultation process for Transform TO in December and January, and just say a word about what you were able to do in Etobicoke for that and how that is helping. Like we obviously need to mobilize. That's what you're talking about. We need to get more people engaged and excited. So maybe just say a word about what you did there. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually had another public workshop that I think 60 people attended back in October, and it was sort of the suburban issue of how to foster more walkable communities so that we're not so car dependent, and all the benefits that would come from that. So that was a good meeting, and we've prepared a report that we will share with the 3 Etobicoke councillors. And it obviously has climate implications. If people are walking more and getting exercise and meeting their neighbors instead of driving solo in their cars. Then in January, we kind of thought that the end of January was the deadline for input, but so we hosted an event in a donated space in Etobicoke. A very friendly a person let us use this space, and actually he was one of the speakers at it. So we had 3 or 4 speakers, one from T, Hao Sin from T, a climate activist working in community housing to educate people about climate, and in particular waste management. She spoke. So we had somebody speaking, to tenants. We had somebody else speaking about your property as a piece of the climate picture. If you're a property owner, what can you do in your yard differently to contribute to biodiversity and soil enrichment and so forth. So these were we just had brief, like 5-minute intros on, I think, with 4 speakers, and then we broke up into round tables, and people really, really enjoyed that. Being around a table with 6, 8 other people, exchanging views, listening to each other. There's nothing that can top that, I think, for engaging people. But then you have to follow up on that. You have to say, we'll write up our summary here, and we'll send that to you. And I mean, I try to keep reminding myself we need a call to action for everything we do. Don't just be a one-way broadcaster of information. The information has to be for the purpose of engaging people to do something. So we hope we can re-engage them as Transform TO moves forward. So we got their input, and now we want to update them as May and June come around to say, here's what staff have boiled down from what we and others have asked for in the next 5-year plan. So yeah, that was basically what we did, and I was very happy. We had about 40 people at that event in January.
That's fantastic, Brian.
Susan, we wanted to, I'm not sure, but Anna, yeah, I think she's next, and then Jane, and then we might have to call it a night after that. We're getting close to 9, but let's see. Thanks, Brian. That was really great to hear all of that. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, well, just pursuant to what Brian said, that sometimes those petitions that you bring to the meeting can be effective, and I like constructing them myself now. We surveyed about bike lanes from Dundas to Jane, every single store we got input, and holding on to that for dear life. And also about Ontario Place, about 400 people, and the sample was the air show. So a lot of PC people who just would never want to spa in that location. So that sort of thing can help us in meetings when we show up as representatives of many. One question I had, so in addition to op-ed training and the other thing, sharing intel from City of Toronto committee meetings, that we can't all be at all of them. Something that was inspiring from Judith's recount of all the steps with Lily Cheng up in North York, in a Willowdale brand climate action, was that people there really liked direct action. So hands on trees, and knowing that something felt like a real difference that you could perceive. And when we were customizing the community environment days, it was discovered that you couldn't actually upcycle perfectly good computer hard drives or invite a group like 3Geek, because the city had some sort of data safety regulation, so they don't trust data destruction or have a mechanism for it, which interferes with the right to repair or upcycle. So I would love to know the most effective way to propose this a city bylaw. I've never actually done that, and amongst the wonderful people here, I learned how to make a deputation years ago, and so I feel that I'm ready to propose a bylaw change. For community environment days specifically. So I would love a workshop on that.
That's a great idea, Anna. Thank you.
Really?
We'll add it to the list. I did want to say one thing before I give it to Jane, in that the direct action bit, because I think, you know, a few of us do direct actions. The wards project, though, the main focus is building these positive, sustainable relationships with our counselor. However, if your group decides that you want to do something on your own, that's absolutely fine, but it would be kind of separate from the focus for this, getting us to June, just as a little side. And I'll now pass it off to Jane. Thanks, Anna.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Judith for doing such a great job of reporting on what's been going on in Willowdale. I'm on her team, which means Scan has been part of everything that she listed as well, and Mike Green's been up at some of this. And I think we're making a difference from getting to know the counselor, because I got a call last week saying, hey, we want to do another climate roundtable, but we wanted to make sure you and Judith were available on the days we're looking at. And Judith and I both got notes today about there's an eco fair coming up. Do you want a table? So I think getting proactive stuff back from the counselor is a really good indicator of how things are going. I had a bigger question. I know we have very little time. I can't imagine trying to recruit all the people in our area from the Green Neighbors list and whatever and say, well, we want you to join, but we want you to join the wards group and the climate group that's going to do broader stuff. And oh, you're already part of a NORC. I'm getting confused, and I'm not sure how you invite people without confusing them. If anybody in the lead group wants to answer that, I'd love to hear it.
I think we've got Lynn possibly gonna take
Sure.
that.
Yeah, it's important to kind of say what this little group, this little network is setting out to do right now, this immediate few months, having to do with getting this new Transform Teal plan introduced and passed, but also possibly amended and improved, because we don't know that what the staff is going to bring forward is going to include everything that we think is needed. We suspect the current plan is not quite getting us to the 2025 targets, so there wasn't enough in the current plan to get us there. In order to get us to our 2030 targets, which is another 20% reduction, we're going to need some bold new changes. And whenever you do changes, there's pushback. There's going to be pushback to the buildings regulations and changes, mandatory efficiency standards. There's going to be pushback. There's obstacles. The executive committee didn't pass action forward on the parking lot levy or the stormwater levy that we've been trying to get going for years. And I talked to Diane Sachs today, a counselor, and she says we should be pushing for those. They need to be in. So if staff doesn't put them in, we can get them in through counselors if we have enough counselor support. So I'm on the Climate Advisory Committee. I'm actually co-chair, and on April 4th, we have a Climate Advisory Group meeting. That's a whole group of 26 people that they've chosen, industry people as well as activist people like me. And we'll be looking with city staff at what's going to be proposed. So I will also say that if people have really bright ideas, anything you think should be in that plan, there's lots of things I'm thinking of now, and I'm asking other people to help me with the great ideas that we need to do that will really help us get to our target that the city can do. As Val said, we have to look at things the city can do. And so I wanted to say why it's so important that we do this kind of work, but also that there's other groups in the wards, as you've talked about, and people may be doing other things in their wards, and after this thing is passed, people will be doing other things in their wards, so that this group in this form may or may not stay going forward. We hope that it will stay as some kind of a network, but then there's other things. Once that 5-year plan is in place, then there's all the implementation and what we want to do, and there's what we can do in our ward. How can we build in our ward? I also wanted to say that even though you might be only 3 people meeting with your counselor, you can really make a difference. I was amazed at how much difference I made this is years ago, but Parents Environmental Network made at Toronto Board of Ed when the whole place was being amalgamated. Huge changes made. We managed to keep environmental programs on the agenda just by having our little group meet every month and feeding in at the appropriate times. So we know that these voices can make a difference. Of course, it's great if we can get more people involved, but just to get it started, to make sure that each councillor knows that, hey, I've got constituents that care about this. And as Susan said, building a collaborative relationship. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I don't know if that sort of answers your question, Jane. People will have to discern what's the most effective use of their time in the options that they have. But having this kind of network, I think, will be good.
Okay.
And I want to thank you all for coming. Oops,
Yeah.
I lost my face there. I'm sure other
Lynn, you usually like to take a screenshot as our farewell. We can all wave to each other. And want to do that?
Sure.
I've closed the chat, so if everyone who wants to picture, opens your video, then I can just take a screenshot. So give it a smile. Great. I'll take a couple. Thank you.
I think we have two screens full.
Yeah.
Oh, another screen. Yeah, I have to go to the other screen. Hold on a second. Here we go. Everybody smile. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Lynn.
thank you so
Our
much.
first family photo. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks everyone so much for coming out. We'll be sending out some follow-up details, and don't forget next week, Monday, will not be recorded. So I really hope everyone can come. You can just let us know, wordsproject@climatefast.ca.
Yeah. And from our meeting this afternoon with Laura, it's going to be really good.
Screen.